Welcome to Mamas and Mimosas. I'm Janelle.
I'm Roni.
And I'm Marianne.
And today we're talking about overcoming sexual abuse. You may want to grab a tissue box because we're going to share our personal experiences and the signs to watch out for so that we can do our best to protect our little ones. So let's jump right into episode 12.
But before we start, we want to thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel after last week's episode. Make sure to leave us a comment so we can show you some love.
Should we cheers? I know it's going to be a...
We have our little random roll of tissue.
We got this.
Okay.
We're dreading it. We're dreading it because it's going to be a hard one.
But your strength in speaking about it is going to help so many other moms out there who were afraid to speak about it or have never spoken about it.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind when, you feel like, oh shit, why am I saying this?
Yeah.
Because you really are helping people.
That's the goal.
Okay. So, who wants to go first? What is your experience with sexual abuse?
I'm going to let Janelle have it.
All right. So let me just tell you that, I'm going to laugh and stuff because that's my nervous twitch is to, laugh instead of cry. Okay? So don't think that I'm taking this lightly because I know it's very serious. But this is just how I cope and get through it. Okay. So, when I was 5, we had a family member from Mexico. He was 18 at the time. He was a cousin, and he came to move in with us. And I remember, he was so cool, and, everybody loved him. He was, super charming, and, I remember all my younger, my cousins that were older than me thinking, oh, my God, he's so cool, and he was, the big deal of the family. And so when I don't think that he had started paying attention to me right off the bat. It had taken, a while. I mean, I was 5, so I don't know the time frame of how long he was there until it started happening. But little by little, I remember him paying more attention to me and wanting me to sit by him. We would all be in the living room, and he'd oh, come and sit by me, and he'd put his arm around me. It started off as innocent, oh, my big cousin wants to cuddle with me, and he's so cool, and I'm so lucky because he wants to cuddle with me, And so it was like that, and then little by little, it was oh, here's a blanket, let's put the blanket over us, and let's cuddle with the blanket. And it would be in front of everybody though, so to me, I didn't think anything was wrong with it because
everyone's watching.
We were all there. It was in front of my dad and my mom, and we were watching movies, and he would cuddle with me. So I didn't think it was weird at all.
It didn't seem like a bad relationship.
No. And in fact, I thought I was lucky that he was paying me so much attention, and because everybody thought he was so cool, I thought I was the lucky one. And then little by little, it was he would start groping, or then it started crossing the line where it was getting handsy and stuff, and at the time I didn't know it was wrong. I knew it was weird, but I didn't know it was wrong. And then but it was, the weirdest thing was it was in front of my parents, and nobody knew. It was hidden
secretly,
but in front of everybody. So I remember just sitting there and thinking,
oh my
can
God,
everybody see me? I'm sitting there, there's this huge pillow on top of both of us. Everybody, there's 4 kids, everybody's running around, and then they're my cousin, and, and, my parents are, trying to take care of all these kids, and we're just sitting there, and, I just remember thinking, how can nobody see that this is happening, But I remember, being too afraid to say anything.
Did he tell you not to say anything?
I don't really remember. I think because he had the guts to do it in front of my family, I didn't even think that they would, not that they would care, but I was just so little that I didn't understand that they would have my back,
Yeah.
So if I said that this was, I didn't even know that it was wrong until it was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
because at one point so when it when it crossed the line to full on what it became, I remember we were at the dinner table and my cousin was in the shower. He was taking a shower and we only had one bathroom and I really had to go pee. And so I remember like going, you know, and which is normal.
Getting like goosebumps.
Which is normal when you have one bathroom. You, people are
everyone
showering
shares,
and you just go in there and pee, you know? So that's when the incident went down, was when that, like, he was in the shower and everybody was right next door at the dinner table, and
no one didn't say, why is it taking her so long?
Nobody knew anything. And I remember coming out and like then I knew like this shit is not right. But I still didn't say anything because I was so afraid, you know? And then I think after that I started becoming afraid of him. And then I remember kind of being mean to him. Like, because I was like, I don't want to be by you anymore. Like, you hurt me, you know? And so I remember being mean and like not wanting to go sit with him. When he would call me and say, come and sit by me, I would be like, no. And then my brother and like my family, this is what breaks my heart the most, is like they didn't know, and they would give me shit because I wouldn't sit by him. They were like, you're being a brat. Okay.
You got it.
And I mean, they didn't know, so it's not their fault, you know? But like, I remember just being so like mind fucked because I was like, you guys, he's doing this to me and like right in front of you guys, and you guys are making me go sit with them, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like what probably was the hardest to get over, was that. And especially like my older sibling, like I adored him. And so when he would be mad at me, like, you're such a brat, like, get out of here. Like, I was like, oh, I hated him for it, you know?
It's like you needed his protection.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not his fault, and I never even told him, like, he doesn't even know that I feel this way, because I would never want to put that burden on him, but that's just the real feelings that a little 5-year-old girl felt, you know? So, anyway, my cousin, another cousin that's not related to that guy, he's from my mom's side, he noticed that I was acting weird towards him. And he didn't ask me. He went straight to my mom and was like, hey, what's going on with Janelle and so-and-so? She's been really weird around him, and she's acting really weird. And my mom's like, I don't know. And then he was like, I don't know, just like, I'm just telling you. And he was, oh my God, he was like 12. Like, I don't know.
Way.
Yeah, he was 12.
Wow.
The one that went and asked your mom?
Yeah, the one that went and asked my mom. So then my mom brought it to my attention and was like, hey, like, what's going on? Is there anything happening, you know, at home that you're uncomfortable with? And then I just remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. You know, like, she knows and no one's going to believe me because everybody's always on his side, you know? In my head, I was thinking that. And then I remember her kind of pushing a little bit and saying, like, you know, if anything is going on, you can tell me. And then I just remember breaking down and crying. And then, so she, like, immediately, like, knew, but she didn't know the extent of it. So I remember her asking me questions like, has he touched you? And things like that. And I remember just nodding and crying because I just didn't know. I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. I thought it was my fault. I really felt like it was.
Nephew? Like, was it her blood?
It was my dad's.
Oh, okay.
So I think it was easier for her to come to me, you know? But I remember feeling like it was my fault because at first I liked the attention. You know, at first I thought I was special and I thought I liked him hanging out with me and wanting to hug me and wanting to, like, be nice to me. And then when it crossed the line, I remember, like, thinking, like, no, this is wrong, you know? And so, anyway, so then I remember her telling my dad, and I think at the time they thought it was a lot less serious than it was. So my dad had, I don't even know what happened, but he kicked my cousin out. I just remember him calling his sister and saying, "Get him out of here," and then he kicked him out. So I think he went back to Mexico. Well, I don't know how long later, because I was only a kid. I have no idea the time frame, but I remember it could have been years or months or weeks or whatever, but I remember like she wanted to talk to me a little bit more about it and ask me more questions, my mom. And then I remember hearing about like how babies were made and stuff, and then I remember feeling afraid, like thinking, "Oh my God, like what if I'm pregnant?" You know, like, and so I remember asking her like, "Mom, can I be pregnant from him?" And she was like, "What?" You know, and I don't think she realized like that extent.
Point, yeah.
So she then freaked out. She called my dad, and she like they took me to the hospital to get examined, and I don't even know, like they don't share with the kid what the hell the results are, or you know, like what the outcome is and stuff. But I just remember the cops coming to my house after that, and then them interviewing me, and like I had to be by myself, you know, which is so awful of a
scary
process, because you don't want to talk to anybody, especially these people in uniforms, and they're asking you these questions, and you think you don't even want to talk to your parents, like let alone strangers. So, and by yourself. So they asked me all these questions, and then I remember hearing them talking to my parents and saying like, "Well, we can't get him from Mexico. If he went back to Mexico, like we can't go and get him. But if he comes back, then we can like pursue this, or but if we do pursue it, like your daughter, she'll have to go and she'll have to like say her story to like the court, jury. Like inside of the court." Yeah. And I remember, and they're like, "Do you think she's strong enough to do that?" And I'm listening to them, and I'm like, I'm right here. Yeah. I'm right here, and I wanted to, because I finally like was like, okay, getting some strength, like, okay, they believe me, my parents are not mad at me, and I don't want him to do this to somebody else. So, you know, but after that, like nothing really came. I think he went back to Mexico, and I don't know if he ever came back, but after that, I never saw him again. And I remember hearing stories that he had gotten married and had kids, and I was already in high school when that happened, and I just remember feeling so sick inside, thinking like, "Oh my God, like he's probably doing this to his kids." Own kids. I didn't do anything. Like for the longest time, I thought it was my fault anyway, until I finally went to therapy like later on, you know, and realized like I was 5 years old. And even when she would tell me, I was still thinking like I had to have lured him, or I had to have did something to make him think this it was okay.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I had my first son, and when he finally turned 5, I was like, there's no way he could have fucking lured somebody in to make them think that this is okay, you know? So, yeah. On that note.
Yeah, this episode is tough. It's tough.
What about you, Roni?
So that means my turn. Oh, I literally feel like I'm about to have a panic attack.
Take a deep breath. You got it.
Oh. Sorry, guys.
You got it. Just breathe. Here, I'll hold your hand.
Ooh, I did not know it would be this hard. So mine's happened when I was about, I think I was in the first or second grade. And like I mentioned in previous show or on our first episode, I kind of told you where I grew up, kind of a bad neighborhood in LA. And because we lived in this bad neighborhood, the school districts were very bad. So my mom, she wanted me to go to a better school district. So she sent me to live with my grandma. This is not my grandma that everyone knows I'm super close with. This is my dad's mom. So she sent me to live there. She took very good care of me. For the most part, it was just me and her a lot of times. But then I would have cousins come over here and there. So one of my cousins would come over, very friendly. Like we played together, nothing in the beginning. And then slowly, I remember like the first time he kind of like lured me in was like everyone knows, which is crazy, like how I am with Christmas. You would think that because this happened that I would hate Christmas. But he would say like, oh, let's play Santa Claus. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Like, of course I want to play Santa Claus. Santa Claus requires you to sit on the lap. So I would sit on his lap, and then I would kind of notice like he would like make little motions and like just touchy feely, and I'm like, this is weird, but yet I'm so little that I don't really know.
Yeah.
So time goes on, time goes on. I won't get into a lot of detail, but it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse till it finally gets to the point where it's extremely inappropriate. I knew something wasn't right just because like different things and stuff that a 6 or 7 year old isn't supposed to know was happening. So I'm like, what is this? What's going on? So as time progressed, it got to a point where I was kind of like scared to go around him. I remember like when he would get me, and the way he would do it, it was like he would say like, let's play hide and seek, and there would be like other cousins around too, but then he'll make us like hide in the same place, and then no one sees us, and we're playing hide and go seek, and if he picks a good hiding place, then no one's gonna find us, so he just does whatever. And then it started getting to where like my grandma was home, and like I would go in the kitchen and like I was starting to be independent, so make myself like a sandwich or something, and he would come over there and like go in the kitchen, like get places where I was by myself. So I remember a lot of times like trying to like avoid like being by myself, and then if I got like caught by myself, like it got to the point where I knew it was bad, so I would like start yelling someone's name. Like I would say grandma, and then she'll answer like what, and it would scare him because he didn't know if she was gonna like walk towards me, so then it would stop. So after a point where he kept trying to do it, I kept finding ways to like stop it, like I'm gonna tell. And I told him like, I'm gonna tell, and he's like, no, you can't tell. Like if you tell, you're not going to be able to go to this good school. You're going to have to go back. Like he would say stuff, about it. And like, I wanted to go to a good school, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell. But then like, as it went on and it got like more and more in debt to where like, it literally got to the point where like, I remember like saying like, when I told this, I'm jumping all around, but when I finally told my mom, I remember telling her like, there's some sticky stuff coming out, but I'm 7, so like I should not know that, but it just, I feel like I have a 7-year-old right now, and I could not, like, he doesn't know half the things, like, he's a 7-year-old where a 7-year-old should be, like, no 7-year-old should know like what is coming out of a male that's sticky. No one should know. You shouldn't know that at 6 or 7. Like you really shouldn't. So it got to the point where I knew like, no, something's not right. But I couldn't understand either. Like I wasn't doing my own laundry. My grandma was doing my laundry. Like how come she never seen, like I would literally, when it was time to get in the bath, like I would have like sticky, like stuck stuff all over my body. And like she never noticed it. Like I'm sure my underwear had sticky stuff. Like you would look, like we wash our kids' clothes. We look at it. If we see something out of the ordinary, we're like, wait a minute, what is this?
That?
Like, no one, when you're running my bath water and I'm getting undressed, like seeing sticky, I don't know how that slipped through the cracks, but so it got to a point where I was just like, I got tired of every time I would go over there, because I would stay Monday through Friday and then I would go home on the weekend. And then I like loved being home and being with my mom, and then it was like, oh, Sunday, I know I have to go back over here and it's going to happen all over again. And it got to the point where I was tired. I was tired of it. And I was like, one day I remember It was a Sunday. She was dropping me off, and she was like, okay, let's get out the car. And I was like, I can't get out the car. And she's like, why can't you get out the car? And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to live here. And she's like, what's wrong? And I like said his name, and instantly she was like, is he doing something to you? She was like getting all frantic, and I remember I couldn't speak, and she like yanked me out the car, and we went in the house, and I remember she just started going off on everybody. Like my mom went off on everybody in there, and she was like she was like, if someone in here is touching my daughter, everyone's gonna die. She was like, what the fuck is going on? We're gonna figure this out right now. She had called a meeting. She had everyone sitting in there. And she said, you're gonna tell me what he has been doing to you, and you're gonna stay here. And she made everybody stand there. He was trying to lie and say like, oh no, she wanted to do that. She wanted
How
to do
old
this.
was
He was 16 or 17. And he was like, no, she wanted to do that. And I really like, I remember sitting there like, huh? Like, what does he mean? I wanted to do that. I wanted to, and I just couldn't believe he was lying. And my mom knew it was bullshit. She called it bullshit. I remember leaving out of there, and she was like, you're never going back there, and no one's ever going to touch you again. And if they try, she's like, you need to let me know that. And I think she kind of like blamed herself a little bit, because she was just trying to do what's right and send me to a better school. And she never really had to talk with me before it happened. You know that no one's supposed to touch you there. I don't ever remember getting that talk, because I felt like maybe if I would have got the talk, then I would have automatically knew. But I don't remember getting the talk until after it happened. And then I knew, okay, this is totally wrong. But the sad thing, and why I feel like I'm so like not messed up, but this bothers me, is I know you guys like hear me all through the show say like, oh, I hate that I have a big butt. I hate that I have a big butt. Because that's one of the reasons I feel like ever since I was a little girl, I literally had a big butt. I used to get teased about it, everything. So I felt like to an older guy, that was what attracted them to me, because I wasn't shaped like your average little girl. And I say this because there have been incidents where I went to a friend's house. So I went to a friend's house, and then we went to spend the night at her aunt and uncle's house. And the uncle was actually molesting her. And since I was spending the night that night, he tried with me too. Yeah, so it's not just one incident. And he didn't get to, all he got to do was like rub up my leg a little bit and started going in my underwear. And just when he did that, his wife walked in from work, and that was it. But so this is why as a little kid, you're like, okay, I have two people target me, you know?
Was that after the first
That was after the first incident.
And did you know your friend was?
No, but she didn't even, like, even after that, I never brought it up to her. I just like avoided her and didn't go over her house. But she, I don't even know what became of it.
Yeah.
I don't even know what became of it.
That's crazy how you said that your mom talked to you afterwards, because that was the same thing. Like, and I think that that's why we need to talk to our kids at a young age, because the predators get to the kids while they're young and innocent
And
don't know yet, you know, because my parents, I don't remember them telling me anything either, but you damn sure after they were like, you don't sit on nobody's lap, you don't cuddle, you don't let somebody put a blanket over you, you know, like, even though they never blamed me, I just feel like they were always trying to tell me how to protect myself and keep myself away from those kind of situations. But it's hard, because if you're alone somewhere, you know, like, they can completely take advantage of that situation. Holy moly.
So, Roni, did your point of view change after you had kids?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? It kind of, it made me, I'm still a little paranoid. It makes you a little paranoid, because I feel like you're overly something that another parent might like not be such a big deal to them. It's like over the top to a sexual abuse mother. Like it's so over the top. So definitely after kids, I just became like more aware and like knowing to tell them like very early. Like I start introducing this to them like when they're learning their body parts. I'm like, this is a no-no, like I told them super early and just kind of like making them aware. And it made me a little paranoid as far as like who I leave them with. Like my kids don't get to do a lot of sleepovers at all. Like if my kids go sleep over your house, it's like I trust you guys, like because I pick and choose where I let them go. So it's like I'm their bodyguard. So it's made me more aware because of this.
Yeah. And the same, like I felt because I was so little and for the longest time I thought it was my fault. And even so when I went to therapy I didn't go to therapy for this. Like, so my parents were going through like a hard time because my younger brother has special needs. So, and during that time he was moving to a group home, which was really hard for my mom to like let him go. And so we went through like family therapy. And then on my own, I started trusting the lady and I was like, can I see her by myself? And my mom was like, she knew, I mean, everybody knew already, so, but I never talked about it because I felt like my way of coping with it was just like pushing it out of my head, pushing it. So for the rest of my childhood, I remember just being wary of people but not thinking anything was wrong with me. Like it wasn't going to change my life or I wasn't going to let it like control me, you know? And then I would hear people say things like, oh, well, if this happens to people, they always turn this way. Like they end up becoming a lesbian or they become gothic or they become this way. And they'll, not that all people are, but you know what I mean? Like they would stereotype you that you're gonna become a hoe or like all of this stuff, And I just remember always soaking that in and thinking like, not me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, try to go a different path, and, but I didn't have any relationships. So, and like I said in the other episode about sex life after kids is like, it took me a long time to trust, my boyfriend at the time to get to that point. But I remember once we got to that point, me thinking like, no, this is wrong. Like I immediately thought that all sex was wrong. It didn't feel right. And this is my fault. I'm luring him in and then I'm shutting him down, And so I was really screwed up. And then so it just was perfect timing that we were going to family therapy. And then I was able to talk to her and I was able to confide in her and tell her like, I feel like it was my fault. And then I didn't have kids at the time. So she would try to tell me like, you were 5. How could something like that be your fault? And I'm like, because I wanted the attention. I liked how he was giving me the attention at first, So maybe I asked for it or things like that, things that people think of. And she was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a little girl bouncing on his lap innocently. Like, adults are not supposed to cross that line, Yeah. And then I started thinking, well, maybe he's not, like, he's only 18. But then I'm like, no, you see 18-year-olds and then you see 5-year-olds. And there's no way that that 18-year-old's going to be attracted to that 5-year-old, Like, so now it makes sense after all these years, but for so long it didn't. And I remember like I just feel like I don't think that I don't know if I would have told my mom, like if my cousin had never said anything. I don't know if I would have had the strength to tell her, and who knows how many years it would have freaking gone on, I remember being really freaked out after like it went to a certain point, but I don't know if I would have had, I feel like for the rest of my childhood, I had no voice. Like it was just this mute child,
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, I would speak, but like, I wouldn't.
You were more reserved.
I was super shy and super quiet,
You feel like that was the reason why?
I feel like that had a lot to do with it. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But I really think that therapy helped because she helped me see that, like, it wasn't my fault. It couldn't have been my fault, and that you don't need to let something like this control the rest of your life. Like your future. You don't have to be a victim. Like, you can take back that power and be a survivor from it, because if you always for the rest of your life you're thinking, oh, poor me, this happened to me, and I'm going to use this as a reason for me to fail or to have shitty relationships or things like that, then you're always going to suffer, and that's always going to hold that power over you. And I didn't want that. I wanted a good life, I mean, we struggled enough with this our whole life. There was no way that I wanted it to control my future, So if any of you have ever gone through this, therapy, I don't even know how you did it without therapy.
I know.
Do you still see the predator, Roni?
No, but when I was in high school, I happened to so randomly, as I mentioned, like, overall, I moved out of LA in 9th grade to go to school in a different neighborhood. And when we moved there, it took we were there for maybe 2 years already. That cousin ended up going to that school. Like, somehow, because we lost connection, we just quit all communication, and we end up moving to the same city, which was like miles away. And I end up running into him in the grocery store, and literally, like, I mean, I was in high school, so it had been years, and I literally had like a freaking panic attack.
Did he see you?
We made eye contact, and I had like
but you avoided each other.
We didn't, like, it was like, you knew, like, had he walked closer, I don't know what I would have did. Like, I probably would have been in jail, but like, we stayed our distance, we made eye contact, and he was with his 2 little girls that were calling him daddy, and I was just like,
in high school?
No, but he was older.
I
was in high school.
That's right.
I was in high school. He was already way older.
Yeah, because you were in 1st grade and he was a 16-year-old.
Yeah, he was already in high school. He was at least 11th, 12th grade, yeah. And here I was in 1st grade, 2nd grade.
Yeah.
But yeah, I seen him with those 2 little girls, and I was like, I just started praying. I was like, Lord,
that he's not doing it to them.
Please. I just started praying. Like, as much as I hate him, I still start praying for the little girls, because I don't wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
No, especially your father. Yeah.
No.
Have
you seen her?
Do you?
No, I haven't
stayed.
He
or you don't even know.
He stayed in Mexico, and then I had seen a picture of him and that he had a family, but I haven't seen him in person.
Do you know if your dad stayed in contact with that sister?
I honestly don't remember. I remember her being upset that my dad had kicked him out in the beginning, but then once my dad found out, like, that when they had me examined and stuff, I remember my dad, like, went on a manhunt for him because he, like, wanted to kill him.
Really?
Yeah. And then I feel like years later he talked to his sister, but he didn't say anything. Like, I don't think he's ever seen him again.
Did your parents start having issues after that happened, or were they already having, like, do you think that might have caused something there?
No, I don't think that changed their marriage, no. And I don't know, my dad was so reserved, so he never really, honestly, he never spoke about it again to me. It was kind of like it never happened, but he just would always, like, warn me, you don't need to be sitting on your uncle's laps, and you don't be alone with them, and, don't be all over them, even if it's your grandfather, even if, like, whoever it is, you don't need to be all over them and stuff. So I wouldn't, and then I was just, kind of closed off, but no, my mom would always ask me later, like, she would kind of keep tabs on me and, like, okay, how's it going, and this and that. And it was just like, I just wanted her to know that it wasn't her fault and she didn't have anything to worry about. So I just kind of, and like I said, I was telling myself that too, that I was fine. But it wasn't until I got in a relationship that I realized, like, I was all jacked up. Like, I wasn't fine. Like, all of a sudden, all these feelings came in. And I
Like
was,
me.
Yeah.
Were
So
you
fun.
doing therapy when you were like dating your
Yeah,
boyfriend
so
at the time?
so when I was dating, so we had started having sex before therapy.
Oh, okay.
So I was like I remember just crying one of the first times and like him being like, "Are you okay?"
Like, what
like
happened?
freaked
Yeah.
out. And then I like told him, oh, how romantic, like let me just tell you my freaking drama. And then I told him, and then he was just like, oh, my gosh. And then he
Yeah.
felt so bad.
so
And I
much
just
to
remember
take
him
in.
just holding me while I was crying. But I feel like because I told him, like we kind of like
Bonded.
bonded over it, and then he was more understanding and he didn't take
Passionate
it
about it,
personal, like that I just didn't want to have sex with him. It was just like I was just screwed up, so and so then after that, like I think we had been dating already for a year, and then that's when the therapy started.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then that's when therapy started, and then I went to therapy for like a year. Yeah.
Wow. How about you, Roni? How did you overcome it and not let it affect like any of your relationships?
To be quite honest, I don't think I fully overcome it because where came it? I didn't get therapy like Janelle, so I still feel like I need to.
This is kind of like
Yeah, it is
therapy. Let me
It
just
is
tell
therapy.
you.
It is therapy, but so sometimes I still feel like that little girl, and in the beginning it did affect our relationship because I would put that with like, oh, that's bad, or I would like have these little spells where I like feel sorry for myself or think back to that little girl, and after a while I was like, okay, you cannot. I think once I start like having the kids and stuff, and I'm like, you got to put your big girl draws on for these little kids because you can't like sit and cope and like constantly go back to that little girl. Like now you have to be the big girl for these little kids, So that's kind of was my like therapy to help me get over it and just be like their overprotective protector. So and my husband is so, I feel like it takes such a like sensitive man like to deal with someone after sexual abuse. I don't think any guy could handle it. Like it has to take a certain kind of man to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And like I take my hat off to my husband because he's like really gentle and checks on me, like he's just like, I feel like in tune, like Janelle said, like bonded with that situation. So all of that drives me and helped me get past it.
That's funny that you said that because I remember guys being turned off that I was a virgin. Like I remember talking to guys, and then when they would find out I was a virgin, they're like, "Oh no, like call me after you sleep with somebody." And I'm like,
What?
Why would I do that? Like, why would I just go sleep with somebody that I don't care about, then come back and call you? And they were like, "Oh, because it's like you get too attached when you're a virgin, So I was thinking like, well, damn, like I'm screwed because I'm a virgin and I'm fucked up. So like that's that's a lot of damage that I have going on, and you're not gonna want anything to do with that.
You're like, little did you know.
Little do you know.
So, what signs should you watch for to protect your kids against predators? Now that you guys have kids and...
So, like, my dad would always say, or, like, my parents, like... Well, all I can do is think of what... Because my situation happened in front of everybody, I know, like... Anytime there's a blanket, I get panicky. Like, I get really hot, and I'm like, okay, guys, like, we don't need a blanket, and, or, like, if they're just even if there's no blanket involved, but, like, the little girl's laying on him, or, like, in that vicinity of the area, and and like you said, oh my God, like, just, like, I'm being overly protective, and that's another thing. Before I even had kids, I would talk to the therapist, and I'm like, I'm afraid to have kids because I feel like I'm gonna think everyone's touching them. And she was like, no, you can't be that way. Like you have to be cautious, but you can't just assume that everybody's touching your kid, and I'm like, I'm really afraid to have children because especially a girl, because I just feel like I don't care if you're anybody, anybody, how
You never
however
know.
close you are, grandpa, uncle, cousin,
exactly.
whatever, like I'm just gonna think that, and like watch like a hawk,
Yep, it's so crazy
and
to see that. So true.
it's crazy because you do, like, even now, I mean, and even when my kid was younger and he would like, he found his weenie and I'm just like, who told you, like, who told you have a weenie? And another thing too is like the whole, like, during therapy, I remember her telling me, like, you were touched in an area where you were not supposed to be touched in until you allowed somebody to touch you there, because that area is not a bad spot. And that area brings you a lot of pleasure when you're in a relationship and when you allow somebody to touch you there. So I think that when you're a kid, you're screwed up in the head because you're thinking like, I know this is wrong, but my body is not telling me this. Or like, he's touching an area that is not telling me it's wrong, but it's wrong, but so my mind is telling me something and my body's telling me something else, and this is just all the wrong feelings, and that's why you connect it to being all sex is wrong, like that's how you start thinking, like, if I start feeling good and this is like all linked in together and it's wrong. But she was saying like, no, those areas are meant for pleasure. And these people are abusing your trust and touching these areas that are meant for pleasure and stimulating those areas prematurely, like
That's a
5
lesson right there.
like 5-year-olds are not supposed to feel stimulation in their areas, and so he's prematurely triggering that. And then now your body's already felt those endorphins and everything, and you're like, and that's probably why people say, oh, girls end up with hoes, because they want that stimulation, because that's what they felt before. Their body already tasted it. It's like drugs.
It adjusted to it pretty much.
They adjusted to it, so now your body's like yearning for it now, but it's not your fault because that was prematurely triggered.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, so
I never thought
that
of
was
it
therapy right there. Okay.
I never thought of it that way.
No,
So, but
I
that
just had
helped
my
a lot.
therapy. I just had my therapy right now.
But that
my
helped a
God.
lot, because I remember, thinking like, feeling guilty because, I'm like, but why do I feel these feelings inside? Or why does, like, when my boyfriend touches me this place, it automatically triggers this emotion inside that this is so wrong.
It takes you back to that little girl.
It takes you back to that little
Instantly.
girl. And you feel like you shut down and you're like mute. And that's why I'm not sexy, because I'm this fucking 5-year-old girl.
Yeah.
That's like, this innocent girl just like letting you touch me, But we're not 5-year-old girls.
So here, I'll take some off of you. Well, like, going back to like what I had asked about, like, how to protect your kids. I remember, honestly, I think my husband and I would come to your guys' house, and your Jack Jordan was little. He was probably like Landon's age, I think, and he was at the age where he was like, come play with me in my room, come to my room.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have kids yet at the time, and I remember like I didn't want to be like a bitch or rude, but I would go and he would close the door, and I'm like, no, we got to keep the door open. Like, I don't want your mom or your daddy to think anything, like, because we weren't like BFFs or anything, but like, like, you trusted us to be in your home, and then like, I'm going to shut the door. Well, actually, I didn't shut the door. Yeah. He did, but I remember thinking like, wow, like, that's, like, little kids do that, you know what I mean?
But
like,
look what your mind was. Like, you knew that it was like respectful. You knew the boundaries to, and like open the door.
I never knew that about you. Like, I never knew your past. Mm-hmm. And like, to hear it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, she probably saw me walking to the room and was like, oh my God. You know what I mean? But
you know what? But I don't see women as predators, and that could be a bad thing too.
Really?
Because I know women are predators. Women
there can be.
And I read a book. Oh my God, I read a book, and it was a grandmother molesting her grandson.
Oh gosh.
Like she was going down on him. And he was like 5.
Ew.
Yeah, and it was in a book and it was like a true story. And once I read that I was like, everyone's sick. Like everybody's sick. You just don't
You
know.
never know.
But you
And no, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, to piggyback off that, I think because of what happened to me too, I noticed like, so I have like a teenager, and he just loves little kids in general. Like all my kids love little kids, but like I tell him, like, if there's like a little girl, a little cousin, or he's like gets too happy or pick them up, I'm like, no, like, you know, I tell him, no, don't pick her up like that, or like, because I know, like, I don't want anything to be mistaken, so I'm like training him to like let him know what's inappropriate and don't even though she's fucking 2, don't be flipping her up, like, you know, I get to that point because I'm like, I, you know, wish someone would have looked at the sign. So I tell him all the time, like, because they're just loving, they like that, and I'm like, Devin, don't fucking, you know, or I'm like, she has on a dress, or you know, like, I just point out little stuff that, you know, because I feel like I don't know if it's like because I wish someone did that for me or what, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna help you learn these boundaries. I don't care if she's 1, 2, everybody, like, because they don't have a voice, and you hear stuff like happening to. I saw a case where someone went to jail for like messing with a 9-month-old.
Oh my
like,
God.
what is wrong with you? A 9-month-old? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
So
when you hear things like that, it's like
it doesn't matter. Like, you
nuts.
But it's so crazy because I remember we went to the cabin just this last winter, and I remember Jack my oldest son, he's 11, he was laying on the couch with a blanket on him by himself, and then my baby girl went and ran up to him and was laying and cuddling with him, and then Harley wanted to get in on it. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
She wanted to cuddle. And then, like, right then I was like,
Get off.
Okay, let's take the blanket off. Like, I was uncomfortable because I didn't want you.
And he was like, Mom, why can't we have the blanket? You were like, we're putting blankets up.
About her?
That morning she told me, and I was like, oh my God, save it for the...
Yeah, she shut my story down and was like, zip your mouth, we have content, get your ass on the show.
And that's awful, what an awful friend, but I just knew, the reaction.
How did we even start talking about it?
Because I had brought it up in the sex episode, and you were like, oh my God, it's so crazy that you brought this up, because my story is similar, like my cousin did this, and I was like, shut up, and then you kind of started telling me a little bit more, and then I was like, save it.
I had snot coming out my nose and crying and everything. She was like, okay, that's enough.
No, you weren't. But I remember thinking, like, immediately, since you said that, and then my son's laying there with the blanket, and then your daughter wanted to come in, you know, on the action, and I was just like, okay, no blankets off. Blankets off, because this is making me uncomfortable.
And we had the fireplace on and everything. Wasn't it all cozy?
It was snowing, and but still, like, I get uncomfortable, too, and I tell my son, too, like, you don't need to be extra. And it's sad because, it could be innocent, but it makes me, like, I don't know what the hell I would do if my kids ever did that to somebody else, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, I've never had an experience like your guys's, but so when I was in high school, like, my dad passed away when I was little, but then my mom's like fleeing from the Philippines ended up moving in and living with us, so he's like my stepdad, I guess, but I never claimed him as that because like I was always like a daddy's girl. Or
your stepdad now?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So as I was getting older and I got into high school, like our bathroom is like in the hallway, but my room, like there's a bathroom and then the living room and kitchen, and then you go into my room, so you have to pass the living room and kitchen to go out of the bathroom or to my room. And I remember, like, I would take showers and, like, I wouldn't have my clothes with me. Like, I would just have a towel wrapped around me and I'd have to run to my room. But he would be in the kitchen, like, watching TV. And he would whistle as I'd walk by or, like, run by even. So, like, I knew I was already older, like, in high school. And I knew that was, like, weird. But, like, he never, like, touched me or anything. But I was just, like, creeper, you know? Like, what the hell? But I never thought anything of it until I had kids, and I would bring Landon over to the house, and we would stay at my mom's house, and he would, like, you know, like, my mom and him would, like, play with Landon or whatever, and I never thought anything of it with my mom, But then he would play with him, and like they'd go to their room, and he'd have the door closed. And I immediately, like, even though I never like was sexually abused, like
Still,
my heart would sink, and I'd be like, "Mom, can you go get Landon like right away?" Like,
Yeah.
or like go see what they're doing. And like I think she got the feeling off me, because then she would go and just bring him back out, or she'd tell him come out and do it over, or like come watch over here. But I like never like believed anything was happening, but inside I had like an inkling, like yeah. And you know, and my husband is even more like that, kind of has that sense, like, get him out of there. Like, I don't trust anyone, you know. So, like, when it comes to my kids, like, things like that, like, behind closed doors, like, even if
Red
it's,
flags.
like, a family member. So, I don't know.
Red flags. Like, do you have to just, it's your mommy instinct. Like,
Yeah.
Your mommy intuition.
So,
you just being a mommy.
a way to protect your kids is just make sure that they have personal space and boundaries, you know, and like tell them. I mean, I don't know if you want to tell them not to sit on people's laps or, you know, but
I feel like what's their comfort zone? Because I feel like what we may be our boundaries, because you know,
of
sexual abuse.
situation.
Our boundaries may be different from like someone may be okay with that. Someone may be like, I've seen something recently about this big thing going around with people who kiss their kids in the mouth. Like some people are finding that inappropriate. So some people are like, oh no, this is how you kiss on the mouth. And then some people are like, no, you're never supposed to kiss your kids in the mouth.
Like a celebrity did that to their kid. And
so
like
I guess it just depends on that person's boundaries, what they, you know.
Yeah, I'm just grossed out by saliva, so I don't really kiss.
You don't kiss your kids in the mouth? Like, I still kiss Landon on the lips.
You do?
But see, my husband doesn't. He doesn't. Like, will like do a hug, or he'll kiss him on the cheek or the forehead. But
you know what we do? We kiss, like, I'll kiss his nose and he kisses my chin. So that's always been like our thing, like this, like that. And so that's
wait, is
all
that
of my
Eskimo?
kiss.
No, I think that's the eyelash.
Yeah, so like instead of me kissing them on the mouth, I've always done that. Kiss their nose, and they've kissed even. Well, no, as babies, I would kiss them.
So at what age did you change it up?
So Ray, I'll kiss her on the mouth. She'll kiss me like, you know.
How
but
about
I
your
think
husband and Ray?
I think it just depends on the kid, because like if their mouth is open, I'm not trying to kiss them on the mouth. You know, like I'm like, I don't need all those vomits all over me. So like that's when I would go up higher and kiss them on the nose and then let them drool all over my chin. But my husband,
because that's a like opposite sex.
I think she's like a tight lip, like, you know, she's a hard kisser.
On the lips?
On the
lips?
lips?
I think they kiss on the lips.
We're like on the side, all of us. Like, like halfway, like cheek lip.
But like now that the boys are older, I think it's cheeks. I've never seen him kiss them on the mouth, other than when they were little. And I think she's kind of getting to a little bit older. Like she's 2, but I think eventually he won't kiss her on the mouth. But some people do. Like I just had a bride on her wedding day. Like she kissed her dad smack on the mouth, and I was okay, people do this.
Yeah,
it's just what you were raised. Like my dad never kissed me on the mouth. You know, and so I just think that I don't do it, you know, but I mean, I'm sure if my dad kissed me on the mouth, maybe I would kiss other people. Yeah, I mean, I would not think it was weird.
Like my mom would kiss me on the lips, and I, like, now that I was older, I was like, would kind of go to the side, but she, you know, would straight, and sometimes we would, but I was like, I don't know, but now that Landon's at the age where he's like not a toddler anymore, so I'm like, should I not? Like, it's weird. Like, he comes straight for my lips, and I'm like trying to dodge it, but he like looks for my lips. So
does my 7-year-old. He'll literally hold my face to try to hold me and like have a wet, juicy kiss for me, and I'm just like, all right, let's
should you have a talk with him or what? Like, that's why, like, I don't know what to do with that.
I just say your mouth is wet, so kiss right here, and I'll kiss you right there. But my mom never kissed me on the mouth either. Like, I'm sure she did when I was little, but growing up and stuff, she's always kissed me. Like, big ones on the cheek,
I
but...
think it just depends on the...
Yeah.
And we're not saying anything's wrong with it. We're just saying what we experience.
Like, my in-laws, they try to kiss me on the mouth.
They do?
Yes, they do. So I think it just depends.
Well, it's just like, did you guys used to suck on the pacifier to clean it off? Like, I've had
When it drops on
friends
the
who,
floor?
where it drops on the floor, they just kind of clean it. Or if they have to hold it for some
Oh.
reason and use their hands, they'll pop it in their mouth.
Really?
Or they'll be like,
I
my
think-
pacifier, and they'll pop it in their mouth and then they'll give it
Ew,
back.
know what? I'm not-
Look, don't say
I'm
ew
not even
because-
gonna lie. Oh my God, I'm not even, I said I'm gonna keep it real.
Keep
Oh,
it
Mama's a
real.
mom.
Represent those moms.
I've been that mom where it dropped. It was like, what is it, the 3-second rule?
Mhm.
It dropped, and I was like, this baby needs this pacifier. I'll take some emergency
They
later.
have, like, the antibacterial wipes for the
Like,
pacifiers.
that's the real mom. Hashtag mom life. Because hey, I rather took the risk of getting whatever virus was popular back then, not coronavirus, but whatever was popular, than that baby crying. So I.
But
just
you know
licked
what?
the
Now,
dirt.
with my second kid, like, it's on the floor for like 10 seconds, 15. I'm like, go ahead, eat it.
I just wipe it off on my sleeve. Yeah.
Okay, we're here.
Okay, wait,
Yeah,
so
we gotta get
what
back. Lick
should-
it loud. What did they put in here?
What, Roni, what signs should you watch for to protect your kids against predators? I know Janelle kind of answered that question, but I don't know.
What signs? Just listen to your kids. Like, I feel like if you establish that early on, the boundaries of what people shouldn't do, and then watch. I feel like just watch them. Protect them. Like, you really gotta.
You gotta watch.
It's gonna be over the top. It's gonna be, especially if you've been sexually abused. It's gonna be over the top. You're gonna watch for more than signs.
Especially if all of a sudden their attitude changes.
Yeah, you'll
towards
know it's
somebody.
changing the
Like, if
attitude.
all of a sudden, if they like somebody and then all of a sudden they don't like them,
Something happened.
Something had to have happened, and not necessarily like it went full force, but you could catch it in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, and ask them like, "Hey, tell me," and make sure you tell them that they're not going to get in trouble, because I think
Yes,
that's the
yeah.
biggest worry, is like you're afraid that your parents are not going to believe you, and that you're going to get in trouble, especially if that's what somebody's telling them.
That's a good
You know,
point.
because I always tell my kids, like, if somebody touches you and they tell you, like, I'm going to kill your family if you say something, I was like, you tell me, because we'll kill them first.
Right?
But, like, I try to tell them, like, this is what people say, and this is what people would tell you if they wanted you to keep this secret. But you should not keep a secret from your parents, and you should know that you're never going to get in trouble, even if you think it's okay what they're doing. Like, if anybody touches you and it doesn't feel bad, but it, you know, like, you're just confused why they're touching you, just ask us, and then we'll tell you that's not appropriate, and then we will protect you. But we can't protect you if we don't
don't
know.
say
No,
anything.
yeah.
You know?
So, let me chime in. Right now, Landon's at an age where he's 5, and he thinks private parts are hilarious.
Yeah.
And just even today, like, my husband had to have the talk with him because he was sitting at the table and started saying, oh, that guy had a big belly button and big nipples and a shiny head. And I was like, as soon as he starts saying things like that, I'm like, not appropriate. You need to stop. And he thinks it's hilarious, and he keeps going. And then, like, I had said, like, okay, you're being inappropriate. I already told you to stop. Like, you're going to have a consequence if you don't stop, because now you're teaching Levi, like, to be inappropriate. And he was just laughing and kept going on and on. And so I put him in timeout, right? So then I, like, after he had his consequence, I had pulled him out and was like, what? Like, do you understand why you're there? Like, it's not okay to just talk about private parts. Like, it's only okay to talk about private parts if you're talking to your doctor, mommy or daddy, or a policeman. And he's like, why would I tell a policeman about private parts? And I'm like, well, if somebody's, like, touching your private parts and a policeman asks, or if someone's touching your private parts, period, like, you need to tell mommy or daddy or a doctor or
And the police will be
policeman.
involved.
And, like, in his head, I could see, because I've never said that to him before, and, like, the wheels are spinning in his head, and he was like, well, won't they laugh? It's not funny. And I'm like, no, it's not funny if you're telling them someone is touching your private parts. And he was just like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, do you know now? Can you repeat what I told you so I know it like processed? And he said it's not okay or it's inappropriate to talk about private parts unless it's like mom, dad, blah, 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 right? And my husband had walked in as he's sitting in timeout, and he's like, why is he in timeout now? And I told him, like, he's talking about private parts, and I just told him, so I had Landon repeat to his dad, like, what he had just learned. And then my husband comes to me and is like, well, why is he saying that? Like, whose private parts is he talking about? And then I started thinking, like, oh, shit, like, oh, my God. So then he, like, as I was, like, freaking out, he had taken Landon, like, to the living room and sat him down. And, like, I could hear, like, I was in the kitchen. I could hear his conversation, like, who are you talking about, bud? Like, trying to be calm. Sure. Yeah. And I didn't even think about it. But I was just like, you know what? Like, it should be safe for him to... Like, and in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a bitch for making it seem like it's so bad. And like
you're trying to shut it down.
But I was just trying to teach him, like, these are the only people you can talk to about it. But I had just given him a consequence for doing it. You know what I mean? So because he's at that age, and I know some of our listeners have, like, kids that are at an age where, like, they think private parts are funny. Like, it's... Like, you should have the talk with them that they should feel comfortable telling you.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? Especially, like, I've never, like, my husband and I have never been in the position that you guys have been in. So, like, we don't really know. I mean, in his profession, he knows about things like that. Or, like, how to talk to kids about, like, sexual abuse or whatever. So, for him, it triggered right away. And it didn't trigger for me until, like, I heard him talking about it. So, I was like...
Like, you thought he was just being inappropriate. And he sees it as, like, a sign.
Because, like, you know, he goes to a school that's, like, a Christian school or whatever. And I'm like, if you go to school and start saying nipples and boobs, you're going to get kicked out. So that was what was running through my mind. And, like, I was like, oh, my God, I didn't even think of that. So...
And every household is different because they're, like, I've been in a household where all of their kids are running naked. And they're just all about, like... being naked, and it's okay, like, it's okay to talk about naked parts, and, you know, it's not like a shameful thing or like you're gonna, you know, look bad upon. So it's all to each their own. And I could see what you're saying, like, you wanted to tell him so that he doesn't get kicked out or in trouble at school. But but that's good that your husband asked him too, because like, who knows what nipples he's talking about, you know. And my son was at that age too, where he thought it was funny to talk about his weenie and take it out and you know, whatever. And like I told you before, like, my reaction was to, like, shut it down immediately. But I think that gave him the reaction he was looking for, so it kind of fueled him. So with the other one, I just kind of, if you want to play with your weenie, and he did it, and I would just kind of like, okay, that's fine, and let him run its course, and then he stopped. And I think maybe it's because of the reaction that I didn't give him, that he just didn't really faze me, so it didn't give him what he was hoping for. I don't know. But that is definitely a conversation to have if your kid is talking about boobs all of a sudden. It's like, well, whose boobs did you see? Yeah. And maybe they saw yours, you know, or like nipples. And, you know, some people are just more curious about things than others, you know. So.
Okay, so what should you do if you think your children are the ones that are being inappropriate to someone else?
Oh, it's over. I'm gonna let you take this one, Janelle.
That's the scariest thing. Yeah. To me, I just feel like that's the scariest thing. I would never want to think that my kid would be a predator or somebody else. But heck no. I just feel like I can't be in denial either. Like, you know, so I would want to ask all the questions. I'd have to be open to hear the other person's side of it. You can't just close off and be like, no, my kid would never. Yeah. You know? I feel like that would be the worst thing that you can do, is just blindly take your kid's side. Mm-hmm. But you have to also, like, get all the facts, and then I don't like
But is this asking what you would do?
if your kid was the inappropriate one.
That is a hard
Or like,
question.
what would you tell? Like, what's your advice for our listeners? If you
That's
think
so
like
hard.
your child, like if you think Devin is a predator, you know what I mean?
I feel
You
like
gotta
I would
talk
beat
to
him so bad that it'll come out because I would just lose. Like, oh my god!
But
I think
you have to
especially because
tell
of what
them
That's why I feel
consequences.
like those boundaries where I'm setting it up to let him know the inappropriateness of like a space. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I'm molding it. Like I feel like maybe the people that did this, no one like told them you are a grown ass man. You have no business looking at a little girl. I feel
Yeah.
like no one told them that because you should know better. I feel like anybody in their right mind would know this is not okay.
Yeah.
But
So-
what if it's a situation when they're the same age and they're touching their homegirl from school? You know what I mean? So it's like, I get what you're saying. You're a grown man. You should know better. But like
the
you
same-
said, you need to tell them. You
The
need to
boundaries,
have
like,
boundaries and
Personal-
respect people's
yeah, like-
personal space. But you have to talk to them about it.
Like you can't be quiet.
This
about
can't
it
be
at
a
all.
conversation anymore that we just ignore as
It
parents.
can't. It
Like
can't.
you, just because it didn't
It's
happen to you
uncomfortable.
and
Yeah.
it's awkward and you don't want to put it in their head, you have to warn them that people like this are out there and they're their teachers. They could be the pastors.
Yeah.
They could be
Their
the
coaches,
doctors.
their coaches,
yeah.
their
aunts,
cousins.
uncles. You know,
Yeah.
yes, like grandparents, fathers, mothers. It's
Yeah.
so sad, but it's so
Like
sick,
the
and
own
you
parent,
need to
parents.
protect them and tell them, hey, if dad ever touches you, you got to tell me. I'm on your side.
Yeah.
You know? And it's so awful to ever think that you married a predator, but you have to be open
You do.
to that and tell your kid, even if your dad touches you, I'm on your side. Like I'm here,
Yeah.
I'm fucking here to protect you.
Yeah.
These are your humans that you created. You need to protect them.
Yeah.
And also to add that, I feel like with little kids, like I don't know if this happened with Janelle, but for me, like it was like, okay, don't tell. I'm gonna take you to get like all this candy or something, like all this baby doll. Like you're 5, you're gonna want the baby doll. You're not gonna be like,
Yeah.
okay, no. So I feel like you need to like notice those signs. Like you say, like, oh, if someone tells you, just like how you teach your kids not to take candy from strangers, it's almost the same thing.
Yeah.
You tell them like, just look for signs. Like if someone's promising you something, because they're trying to touch you in exchange, like say something. And I think I'm pointing out those signs because those were things that happened to me. So those are signs. I feel like that's kind of my trigger. Like I look for the signs that happened to me as
Like
a
a
little girl and look.
bribery.
Yeah, like looking like to see different stuff, like just someone doing things out of the ordinary that they wouldn't necessarily do, or like you said, like too close, stuff like that. So just
Yeah.
looking for all signs.
So yours is like bribery,
Yeah.
like somebody's being a little too chummy and like buying you shit and stuff. And my thing is like it being too close and like putting blankets or pillows. Like all I wanted was somebody to just pull the blanket off. Pull
Yeah.
the blanket off. See what's happening under here.
Yeah.
Just yank this pillow off for no reason at all and see what's happening. You
Yeah.
know, like imagine if that would happen. Like, so if you ever see a blanket or a pillow, you're their fucking parent. You can pull that shit off with the quickness. You don't need to warn and just see. And God forbid you don't want to see, but you have
Yeah.
to protect. You have to just,
No matter what.
and you have to constantly have this conversation. I feel it's not a
Yeah, it goes
one-time
back to
conversation.
just- I
Like
think that's
at
what it goes
every
back to.
age that you that these kids grow, they are gonna understand a little bit more and
Better.
more, and you have to constantly have this conversation in
Yeah.
order to protect them.
That's
you
what
know,
I think it boils down to is your boundaries, because everyone's different, and having the conversation, don't avoid it.
Yeah.
That's the main
Yeah.
thing.
So, to wrap things up, I mean, I know this was not an easy topic for you guys, and it's sensitive. Like,
It is.
it's a very sensitive topic, but it's a serious topic that some of our listeners definitely could use. Like, why did you guys share your story?
my main reason was to show people that if they may think that it was their fault, it wasn't their fault. You know, like what happened to you is unfortunate. It wasn't your fault. And you don't need to settle for a life that you think that you may deserve because of this, or stay with a victim mentality because this happened to you, so you're going to stay in a rut. Like, you can rise above it. You can get help, and you don't have to keep thinking that it was your fault.
Yeah.
And also to protect your babies. I think that that's, at the end of the day, that's like the most important thing to me, is like, once this, like, for those of you listeners that this has actually happened to you, like, your innocence was taken away at such a young, prematurely. Even if you were fucking 21 and this happened to you, like, you didn't give consent, so your innocence was robbed, and once it's robbed, you can never get that innocence back. And once our babies go through something like that, that's it. They're forever. That's their first experience, So I just have to protect my kids so much, like, to make sure that I can try my hardest for that never to happen to them.
I feel like for our listeners that have been sexually abused, they'll like totally get this conversation. But I feel like if you really haven't gone through it, it may sound a little weird, because I feel like we're bringing up points, and like it's taken us back to the little girls that we were in that room. And I really didn't want to share my story because I was so afraid. Like, you guys see me break down, and my heart's beating so fast. This is the hardest show, because I was scared. And I feel like I've held on to it so long, just because I feel like if I held on to it, like, I'm keeping it safe, and scared of people's opinion, and just like so many people think that like I have so much going on and I have it made, but I have that little thing that always takes me back to that little girl, and I suffer sometimes. And I felt like if I really opened up on this show and show everybody who I truly was, and it would help me. Like, I'm already so blessed, and I thank God every day that I am where I am, and I have a beautiful family that I would die for. And when I was a little girl and I closed my eyes and I pictured my life, this is actually it. So I felt like this will help me just release and be even a better mom, a better wife, a better friend, a better sister. It will give me the release, because if I don't reach anybody but one person tonight, at least I reach one person, and we could get through it together.
You did.
I just want to throw in my last 2 cents real quick, just because I'm not a survivor of this, but just knowing, like I never, like I mentioned before, I never knew this about you guys, so to hear it, it's crazy, because I know there's a lot of people out there, or a lot of moms out there who've like needed this. And so I just want to thank you guys for sharing, because oh my god, now because it's not easy. And like, I've had people tell me that they're glad that you guys opened up. You know what I mean? Like, in previous episodes, and to actually go into detail, like, it's not easy. And like, thank you guys for being so strong.
Thank you for helping us.
Yes.
So
it's a real mama tribe. Really, we're not playing.
All right, Roni, you able to wrap this up with us?
Ooh, between that and this Liquid Loud, oh my god, guys.
Mine's empty, by the way.
Gosh.
This was delicious.
It was really good. Okay, so are you a survivor of sexual abuse? I'll read it again. Are you a survivor of sexual abuse? What are some ways you overcame this awful experience? Share it in our Mamas and Mimosas private Facebook group, linked below. What helped you may help someone else. We'll see you next week. Thank you, guys.
Bye.